How are you doing, paranormal peeps? I'm your host, Charlie, and
I'm your co-host, Colton.
tonight we have a returning guest, Ray. So how's it going, Ray?
Pretty good, guys. Thank you for having me back. I'm really excited to talk to you guys again tonight.
Yeah, we decided to have you back on because you're very knowledgeable about this subject, and we wanted to do a special on beasts of the Borderland. It's
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, so before we get started with the encounters, let me just get this out of the way. So if it'd be kind if you guys could like, subscribe, or comment. If you guys don't want to do all three of them, make sure you at least do one of them. So this way we can send out more content like this to you, the viewer.
Nice call to action. I like that.
Of course, the journalism. Okay, go right ahead, Ray.
No problem, guys. I like the way you guys play off of each other. That's awesome. You guys make a great team. So hopefully, you guys, once everything calms down, you go and start hunting out there or paranormaling or whatever you want to call it. But man, I don't know. Where do you want to start? You said you wanted to talk about the beasts of the Borderland. Which beasts of the Borderland are you familiar with?
So I guess we'll go with the most well-known one, being the Horizon City Monster.
The Horizon City Monster, or the AKA the Bigfoot, the El Paso Bigfoot. Man, what do you guys know about it? Before I start talking, let's see if you guys know a little bit about it.
Okay, so the sightings occurred, of course, a while back, and the reports state that this cryptid is it's not like your traditional Bigfoot. The way that the face looks, it protrudes a lot more, which makes me think it's perhaps a type of cryptid called the Gugwi. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Ray,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very aggressive, I hear. There was one report I heard of a man literally going out. Now this is doing the whole Mexican thing, He grabbed his water hose and he just started spraying it with the water, and it ran away.
Oh wow!
That's as far as my knowledge goes. I'm pretty sure he knows nothing about it.
Well, I know its weakness, water. Or maybe he's afraid of water hoses.
Well, it is a possibility. But it's interesting that you mentioned the water, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But when I first heard about it, it was very many years ago. I think this was in the 90s. They heard about this thing that was sneaking into the Horizon City Golf Club or Country Club, and it was drinking from the little lake that they had in there and eating the ducks. Like, it would capture the ducks and it would eat them. Yeah, exactly. Like eating the ducks, all crazy. And people tried to chase it off, and they couldn't do anything about it. It was just there. So I heard about it then, and then my sister actually lived in that area. Once again, we come back to my sister. She lived over there off of Sparks, and she said that she would see stuff every once in a while, like walking around out in the desert. This was before it got real populated, before they had what was that one strip club called? I forgot what it was called. Zebras. I think it's gone now, but there was a strip club called like the Red
Zebras.
Room. There you go. Before that was there was a lot of desert, and my sister and my brother-in-law would go out there, and they would drink in the desert and stuff, and they would say that they would see things, walking around the desert around that area, especially, near the Horizon Country Club. Now, what I heard a few months ago really scared the living crap out of me, because this is something. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Sasquatch Chronicles. It's also a podcast.
Yeah, I've listened to them a couple of times. I'm not like really into them, but I've heard a couple of their things. Colton.
Okay, so
No.
no. So you know that Wes usually has people that have some sort of integrity going on there and talking about their experiences. And he usually has like cops or, military, anybody like in law enforcement, park rangers. that are talking about their experiences with the Sasquatch, with Bigfoot. So a few months ago, I think it was in like early October, I was listening to one of his podcasts, and they had a caller from I think it was mid Texas, around I want to say Abilene, and he was talking about his experiences, with the Bigfoot in that area, and that seems to be a hotspot in mid Texas, in those areas around Abilene, and that's the other one that's right there, man. I used to work in that area. I don't even remember. It's Pecos, and then what's the other one? Van Horn? No, not Van Horn. It's Pecos. I went blank.
Balmery.
Balmery? No, it was further up from Pecos.
Oh,
Alpine, all that area anyway. It's a big hotspot for these things. They're called like desert apes or desert Sasquatch. So he had this caller, and they were talking about the sighting that they had, about this thing that the cops like showed up on, and it kind of like scared the crap out of the cops. And then he referred to it. He said, this sounds very familiar to one of the calls that you had, or one of the interviews that you had a few weeks ago, about a sighting in El Paso dealing with a SWAT team. So what ends up happening, he goes into this story talking about how this SWAT team was up on horizon, and they went out there to do some exercises, to do some drills. On the way back down from wherever they were at, they were somewhere in the desert, of course, undisclosed location, because they're doing training exercises. When they're coming back down, they said that this thing jumped out at them, and they freaked out, and it was huge. They said at least it was 8 or 9 feet tall, and it rushed the car that they were in, I guess the transport that they were in. It rushed it. And they had to maneuver out of the way, and that they had the spotlights on it, and it was growling and like yelling at them. And they knew for sure that this thing, if it wanted to, by the mass and the bulk of it, could have just tossed like whatever vehicle they were in. It could have just tossed it aside, and they were scared out of their minds. And these are SWAT team members, but that apparently this thing ran at them. It like growled, it yelled, and then it just ran off into the desert again. And on top of that, if you guys go to Waco Tanks, I know you guys have heard about these pictographs that are out there in some of the areas. Waco Tanks is a national park, and they found these pictographs. In some of those pictographs, there is, I guess, these drawings of these things, and if you look at them, they're taller than humans. They look, hairy or whatever. They're bigger than a human would be, and they're referred to as, once again, like desert apes. There's an actual name for them. But they're considered guardians of the desert, and once again, they're very aggressive. They're said to live in the huecos, in the cave system that is around Waco Tanks, and that's how they travel. And some of those entrances and exits are in the horizon area, so that's why it seems like they just pop up out of nowhere and then they disappear, because they know their land and they live there. So that's what I heard. That's very recent about the Horizon City Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Now that's very interesting, especially since we're talking about law enforcement here. It's these guys. They don't lie. Depends on the cop, but most of the time, their integrity, it's like steel. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Colton?
I mean, I won't really say if they're known for being like liars or anything, but the explanation about them using the cave system makes a lot of sense, because it gets really hot out in the desert, and I mean, living in a cave system, the best way to like not get burned to a crisp.
I mean, not only that, but they can stay secluded a lot better.
Yeah. Using
the cave systems. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, not sort of related but not really, it has to do with law enforcement. I'm surprised they were willing to talk about it, because I heard an account from Jody Cook, the founder of NADP, the North American Dogman Project. Mm-hmm. And he had gotten word from a DEA SWAT team. So the DEA version of the SWAT team, and they had an encounter with the with a dog man, and they were they were told not to talk about it. And after he got the initial report, he never heard from the officers again, which kind of it's kind of strange that the El Paso SWAT team would disclose information like this. Seems kind of sus.
I mean,
It's a little bit, but I mean, it's a great story. I mean, we could do some more research on it and find out. Maybe talk to somebody that was there, just to put the pieces together. It's just very, very interesting that this happened like so close to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's surreal.
yeah.
And on top of that, now this is just a rumor that I heard. I don't have any sort of documentation for it. But back in the late 80s, early 90s, I don't know if you guys have heard of this. There was a park up on Horizon, like towards the end of Horizon Road, all the way up towards the mountain area, that was called Mountain Shadow Lakes. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it or if you've seen video of it. The park is dried out now. They used to have a man-made lake that was there, and it was huge. And back in the late 80s, they would have like rock fests and, beach parties or whatever you want to call it. There was a lot of rumors going around that once the park closed, the reason that it closed because these things were using it because of the water that was there. So they would come up and they would use the they would drink the water in order to survive, I guess. But it started getting really dangerous because they started appearing more and more often, and that's why they closed down the park. So there's that as well. And once again, I don't have any proof of this, just rumors, hearsay stories that I've heard from the people that live in that area. But that sounds really crazy too. So,
I mean, honestly, to me it does sound believable, because as much as people, when they think of desert, they think of absolutely no food supply, which in our area actually isn't true. Just like a couple, like maybe 15 or 30 miles away, we have the White Sands National Monument, and there are oryxes native to the area. So if for the viewers, to the listeners, listening to this, oryxes are basically this deer on steroids. They're like huge. So I wouldn't be surprised if a huge predator like the Horizon City Monster could perhaps be taking a little trip over to that area to get food supply. What do you think, Colton?
I mean, yeah, it's relatively close to like the whole area. It's like in the middle of New Mexico ish. Like it's close to the center. I would imagine that wherever you're going, that would be like a spot to hit up because of like how empty it is and how like many lizards and like animals are there, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you bring up the oryxes and the desert wildlife like that, because I have seen an oryx. I saw one over there by Waco Tanks one night. We used to go out there, and my friend would shoot the what is it called? Star streams, when they just leave the camera open and the motion of the earth just creates these like star like swirls or whatever it's called. And we would go out there and he would shoot those pictures. And we saw this thing once. It was standing in the middle of the road, and if you look at an oryx, I don't know if you guys have access to the internet right now, but if you look at an oryx head on, it looks like a man standing there, like with the way that its eyes are set and its legs and its horns. It looks like there's someone standing there like a man. And imagine that, you don't expect it in the middle of the night, you flash your light and this thing is standing there. And like you were saying, Charlie, these things are tall. These things are very, very tall, especially with the horns. So I imagine that thing just sitting there. And then you have a Bigfoot running around. So it's quite plausible that this is happening right now. Like you're saying, they're using it as a food source, using other animals as a food source. So
I just would like to say real quick, taking down an oryx is no easy feat. They are extremely aggressive and extremely territorial.
Huge horns, they're like 6 feet tall.
That paired with a horrible temper.
Yeah.
You have to be like really crazy to take on an oryx. But I'm pretty sure the Bigfoot they have their ways of dispatching a huge thing. Just jump on it.
Yeah.
It's not a
Those things, I wouldn't doubt it, man. I mean, from the stories that I've heard, from other podcasts, when they describe a Bigfoot, taking down an animal that's larger than its strength comes into play because it just rips that animal apart. Not to mention the stories I've heard about it ripping people apart as well. That's a whole other thing. But those things are crazy, man. Like, I would not want to meet a Bigfoot unless I was fully strapped with some sort of automatic weapon or something like that. Just intense, man. That would be an intense situation.
Well, that brings up a very good point, Ray. Let's say you do encounter a Bigfoot and you're totally strapped with like the best military gear. What happens if it's not the type of Bigfoot you think it is? What if it's more of a spiritual Bigfoot or an interdimensional type Bigfoot?
Or just a chill guy,
It is a possibility. And, I've had that question. I've had that argument with a lot of my friends. Like, would you be able to take it down? What would you do? I mean, in the end, it's very difficult to say what would happen. A lot of hunters that have been interviewed, they say that when they look at it and they have it in their sights and they're about to pull the trigger and they look at its eyes, there is a semblance of intelligence there, a semblance of humanity there that prevents them from doing that. And they don't want to unload on these creatures. They don't want to kill them because they think they're human. And I mean, what would that cause in somebody's mind if you murdered someone, or if it was something that had sentience to it, an intelligence to it? Would you be able to live with yourself later on after that, even if it looks like it does? It's just a hard question. Like, honestly, I can say all the crap that I want to say right now about, I have guns, I have grenades, I have a bazooka. But in the end, honestly, I probably would not be able to do that. I would not be able to pull the trigger.
Personally, Ray, if I was in that situation, I would only fire in self-defense. I wouldn't go out, hunting these things. I'd just be out there trying to document them. But if, now one thing that's very popular with Bigfoot is they like to bluff charge a lot.
Yes.
So I don't know if acting in self-defense would, be the best thing to do in that situation. Well, what do you think, Colton?
I mean, yeah, I would agree. The only reason, I would imagine to, shoot it is in, self-defense. I know, with gorillas in the wild, you stand your ground or pretend to be, really weak, because gorillas are prideful. They don't attack, quote-unquote weak things than them. You kind of, lay down, pretend you're a baby, and they'll drag you around, but they won't hurt you. I would imagine that's one way to, if they bluff charge, you just kind of stand your ground or lay down and cry. But
lay down and cry.
Yeah.
Man,
I wouldn't hunt one either. I would only document it.
It's difficult to make that call, man. I've seen pictures, usually in Russia, of course, because Russians are crazy. But I've seen pictures of guys that get torn apart by bears. And that's not a pretty sight, there's it's really bad. So imagine something with the strength of 2 or 3 bears. Forget that, man. I don't, even if it is a bluff charge, in the end, when you see that thing charging at you, you're going to, like you said, you're just going to wish that it's not coming at you. You can start crying or, just hide or huddle or make yourself as small as possible. So it is a real thing there, that fear.
So getting, kind of back into the mindset of the Horizon City Monster, is there anything else regarding that particular cryptid that you have to share with us?
I mean, as far as I know that it's very, very aggressive, like you were saying, and the bluff charging, it has done that, to these witnesses. It seems like it just wants to be left alone to do its own thing. Fend for itself, gather food, and just be there. The natives from the area have always called them guardians. They're spiritual beings that transcend, this plane, and that's why they say that it can be in one place and then just disappear and be in another place. because they're interdimensional beings. And I've seen a lot of videos. I've seen a lot of I guess sightings that are caught on video of these things, and the way that they move through the trees. They're there a second and then they're gone. I just saw a video last night, and I meant to send it to you, and I didn't get a chance to. But there's this guy, and I don't know where he's at, but he's riding a snowmobile through the snow, of course, and he sees it. He sees this thing sitting behind some trees. It's just standing there, and he goes through the trees, and he's filming, and he turns around to film it, and it's just like a shadow person. It looks black, like solid black, like you can't discern anything on it. And a few minutes before, he was shooting at it with the camera, and of course he has a light on it, and you could see the brown tufts of hair moving through the woods, through the trees. But as soon as he turns and he shines the light on it with the camera, there's nothing there. It's just a solid mass, like a silhouette of this huge thing. So it's possible, man. These things are not from this dimension, I guess you could say, this plane of existence. So they can travel freely, and there's not a lot of them, so they can just be everywhere at once, kind of thing. Maybe they are how they say Nephilim, or the children of the Nephilim.
Usually, okay, for viewers out there listening, and for Colton's sake as well, because he's a big dum-dum.
Yeah.
Nephilim are these best way I can put them are entities that were created. They were the result of angels mixing different animals together, right, Ray?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I don't subscribe to that theory a lot. What?
Not just subscribing to this.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I don't subscribe to this theory a lot because the way that Nephilim are talked in the Book of Enoch, it's they're like 20 feet, 30 feet tall, and the cryptids that we're seeing now, we're not even anywhere near that height, So I don't think that's what's happening, What do you think, Colton? Even though you don't know that much.
I mean, it could just be like select. Let's say they are the children of the Nephilim. Let's say it's been like many millions of years. You would like shrink down if there's like a I guess decrease in food. You would get smaller to get easier access to like food and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, from an evolutionary sense, it would make sense from going from this huge 30-foot creature to like 9 foot.
I think that you're both right to a degree. The way that I see it is, okay, so let's for a second say, yeah, they are creatures, these interdimensional creatures, the Nephilim, spawned from the Nephilim. Maybe as evolution advanced, inbreeding, because of course they're not going to breed with normal humans, they're not going to breed with other things, inbreeding and stuff like that comes into play, and the bloodline starts thinning, it starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Maybe they did shrink. Maybe they were these tall, monstrous creatures at one point in time, and as evolution took hold and as time passed, they started shrinking down, they started getting smaller to the point that they are now. But at the same time, not saying so much about the fact that they're like spiritual beings, but maybe they're the genetic product of like, and this is, once again, we're going to go down the rabbit hole, right? Like aliens or something, extraterrestrials mixing, DNA sequences, doing things with animals and humans back in the day, Cro-Magnon man, stuff like that. Once you start going down that rabbit hole, things start opening up, and you're like, whoa, what is exactly going on here? There's a lot of aspects of these things, and I hate calling them things, beasts, whatever you want to call them, that are human, but at the same time, they're very animalistic, like the dogmen that Charlie was mentioning. Where does that come from, or where does that come in? I remember seeing a documentary as well. The scientist was trying to explain how there's different branches of Bigfoot, and one of them being the dogmen, and the fact that there was so much inbreeding and so much just solitary existence of these animals that they started reverting back into like this feral state, and instead of looking at the Bigfoot the way it is with its huge face, it started the lips and the face started receding back, like growing back, so it looked like they had a snout, so it looked like they had these protruding teeth, and that's where they get that dog man look, I guess, from. But that's the kind of stuff that I start going down the rabbit hole, and I'm like, man, where does this end? There's so many theories, there's so many ideas.
I think that's the best thing about about this field of cryptozoology or paranormal as a whole. We really don't know what's right and what's wrong. It's I think that's one of the best things in this field.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can say like, oh, this is more probable than this theory, but there's no really, it's this and not this, or it's probably this and probably not that. Until there's like, I guess, evidence, then you can't really say, oh, it can't be this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's getting back on the topic here. So since that's all you have on the Horizon City Monster for now, let's go ahead and jump into the other legends we have here at the Borderland.
Okay, no problem. I wanted to touch on the one that Colton seems to be familiar with. Do you want to talk about that one, Colton?
I'm gonna be honest, I've only heard of it.
Of course.
Okay, well, to be fair, that's more than most of the things we hear. I've heard about it when I was younger, and it kind of scared me a little bit, but I haven't thought about it in recent years.
What did you hear? I want to know what you heard.
Well, we should introduce it, right? The vampire coven under the Franklin Mountain Star, right?
Yes, exactly.
I've only heard that there's vampires on top of the mountain. If you get too close, you'll get kidnapped.
You get snatched.
That's about it. That kind of gave me fear when I was a kid, because I would look up at the mountain when we were in like downtown El Paso, be like, I don't want to go up there. It's scary. And my parents would be like, that's fine.
I actually have I have a story. Oh, sorry, or an encounter rather of a woman. She was dating a man. No, she was on Fort Bliss, the Fort Bliss military base, and she had gone out for drinks with this guy, and basically the way that she described him was she couldn't. She felt, I don't know how to say this. Not obligated, but she felt like
she had to.
She had to like follow everything that he said, and that.
Oh, compelled! I remember that word.
I know. Sometimes, but an old noggin goes away.
Yeah,
and it's sad. 'Cause I'm in college. So she was compelled to listen to everything that he said. He was trying to seduce her outside. He was going for the neck a lot. And it wasn't until she was screaming for help that a couple of army soldiers, came over and, got this guy away from her. And as soon as she, as to look for him, he wasn't there anymore.
What?
So, yeah. It's kind of strange that something like that would happen on a military base, of all things. But, no.
That is bizarre.
Yeah, but that's as far as I know about like vampire encounters here in El Paso. But
so this how long ago did this happen? I'm very curious about this.
So this allegedly it was around maybe 20 or 30 years ago. Sorry, no, 15 to 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So it's more recently, but not really.
It's pretty recent.
Yeah, it's still pretty recent. Wow, I had no idea that had happened. The ones that I'm referring to are kind of like, I mean, I've heard about the Franklin Mountain Star coven, if you want to call it that, of vampires, but they're nothing like what you're describing, Charlie. The ones that I heard about were these things that they look basically, to me, it's like the classic Nosferatu look. They're really tall, they're really gaunt. You get close to them, but they look like, man, and the only way that I could put it is like bird people. They look like these things that have these massive wings that are cloaked up, but when you get closer to them, you see the long nails, you see the elongated face, and they always take off. You know, some people have described them, from what I've heard, as large ravens, and there's a lot of ravens in this area, and the Chihuahuan raven is like the largest raven of its species, and it makes its home here. I mean, you can ride around El Paso and you can see these things just flying around, and they're huge, man. The wingspan on those things sometimes are as much as like 5 to 6 feet. That's how big these things are. But the way to describe them, though, is that they move like with this lightning speed. And during, I guess it was the 90s, there was a rash of animal killings, like pets that would be left out in that area where the star is, which is like, I guess, central, you know, up off of Copia and stuff like that. And these animals were disappearing left and right, and they would be found like in weird places, like hanging in trees. They would found them like on the side of the mountain, like, you know, miles away from where they were like taken. And they were always like either partially eaten or drained of blood. People were saying that it was like chupacabras, but, you know, why would these things like be up in trees and stuff like that? So that's what I heard about them, that they are a coven. There's a group of them. They live in the mountain. They come out when it's really, really, really cold, and it has been cold as of late, I guess. And that's when they seem to attack or feed off of these animals, these pets that were missing. I've never heard of them taking a person, like, you know, Colton was saying, but I've just heard about these animals disappearing and winding up in strange places, like the top of houses and then, like I said, in trees and stuff. So there's that. But once again, I've always been too chicken shit to go out there in the middle of the night and go look and see if you know, I see anything out there. And it's kind of lit up now, I think. Like, it's still kind of lit up. You can go up there. There used to be like a little lane where people would go and park and like make out and do whatever. But now I haven't been up there in such a long time that who knows, man, like, honestly. So that's what I've heard about that particular cryptid.
Now that's very interesting, because it seems like we have two different types of I guess, quote unquote, vampires here in El Paso. We have the more, you know, movie-like version that I described, and then we have the Nosferatu looking as
the weird mutant ones.
It's really strange, and one thing I'd like to, you know, mention is I wonder if these things. I know it sounds stupid. No, you're gonna laugh at me for this one, Colton.
Probably.
You always do. I wonder if these things have you know, if they've ever, you know, had a bone to pick with the Horizon City monsters in the area, of the Sasquatch in the area. I wonder if they've ever had any run-ins.
That'd be. I would pay money to watch that fight, man. That would be awesome.
I mean, it'd be scary. I mean, Bean Bear.
Yeah, but that would be awesome to watch. Like, you have a giant coliseum of people, and you got one side, like, this weird, like, mutant bird vampire thing. On the other side, you got, like, a group of, like, the Horizon City monster. That'd be awesome to watch. Watch my class.
No, I'm talking about, like, this is Jurassic Park 3, where it's Alan Grant in the middle of the Spinosaurus and the T-Rex, and we're just going...
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that would be scary.
You know, that's what I'm talking
cool
about.
To watch, but, I mean...
You'd be...
You know...
Last thing to watch.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because, of course, you know, shameless plug. The comic book that I'm working on right now is actually... What I'm doing is I'm taking all these cryptids and I'm putting them up against, like, tulpas, like, you know, I hate saying the Slender Man, the Black-Eyed Kids, which we'll get into right now because I have a question for Charlie about the Black-Eyed Kids. And also, you know, the Rake and stuff. So I have, like, the Rake fighting the Man Dog, fighting Bigfoot, fighting La Llorona, you know, Spring-Heeled Jack, all these different cryptids, and tulpas, you know, having it out in this comic. So, but the one that you're talking about sounds really, really interesting. Like, imagine these vampire things fighting the Horizon City monster. Dude, you need to write that, Charlie. You need to write that comic. Like, I want to see it.
I think I would have a bias, a very heavy bias, and I think I'd just put a random dog man at the end, and he beats up all of them.
He's in the background eating popcorn until like one of them about to win. He just goes, "All right, I'm about to step in."
Dude, I have the man dog in the comic as well. And if you want to hear about the man dog legend, I'll get into that right now. I want to know what you know about that. But before we get away from the vampire thing, the question is this: so you guys have heard about black-eyed kids, right?
Yes. It's funny how it started out. For the audience listening, the Black Eyed Kids phenomena, allegedly it's been happening for a while, but it didn't reach mainstream notoriety until but now, disappeared Fantastic Daily did his fake encounters with it.
Like his storyline with it.
His ARG, his alternate reality game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's one who brought it into light, but then people started, actually seeing them,
Yeah.
and that's what kind of freaked me out. But that's just for the viewers. Go ahead, Ray.
That's the thing I wanted to ask you about. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you because I get all excited when people start talking about these things. But so are you guys familiar with? I think we were talking about this last time. A tulpa. You guys know what a tulpa is, right? Like tulpomancy, stuff like that.
So let me go ahead and explain it for dumb Colton here.
That's me. That's my nickname.
So basically, a tulpa is you think it.
Yeah.
Your spiritual energy, quote unquote, makes it a physical copy.
That's kind of cool.
I'm correct on that, right, Ray?
Yes, exactly. And I don't know about it being cool, but it's really scary, I think, because if that's true, like if enough people believe in something, like the Slender Man, for example, that's a classic example right there. If enough people believe in it, and there's that mentality, that group mentality that it's real, then things start happening, like those girls that tried to kill that other girl because the Slender Man told them to. The same thing with the Black-Eyed Kids. Enough people believe in the Black-Eyed Kids, and then they started appearing, and people started seeing them. Now, before I get too far into that, let me ask you, Charlie. So the Black-Eyed Kids, they have, I guess, a rule structure, if you want to call it that. First of all, they're usually, pale. They have sunken eyes, and they appear in your home, or they appear outside of your home. And what is it that they want when they appear outside your home?
You did. Ray, you didn't hear what my co-host said, but go ahead, say it again.
They want candy. They're trick-or-treaters. They forget what time Halloween is.
Okay, I didn't hear you.
Victorian era children.
Jokes aside, I think that the Black-Eyed Kids, they usually want to find a way to get in, whether it's, they ask you politely to enter the house, or, they ask to make a phone call. What's even weirder is that sometimes it doesn't even happen while you're at your house. I've heard encounters of these things wanting to, knocking on the car door window and asking to get inside the vehicle, which is kind of strange. Oh,
so let me shoot this idea at you, Charlie. What other creature that we were just talking about does that?
See, that's very interesting that you brought up the correlation between the vampire and the Black-Eyed Kids, because I never would have thought of that, but it follows the same structure as you said, which is kind of connecting the dots for Colton over here.
I mean, not really.
So the Nosferatu vampire, first of all, the Nosferatu vampire is the only type of vampire, it's the classic vampire that needs to be invited in. That's the Nosferatu. The regular vampires, the what do they call them? Like the lust vampires, the sexual vampires, they already have it. The what? I'm sorry?
Like a succubus?
That's a demon.
Yeah, that's a demon, but you're kind of on the right track, because vampires are supposed to be like, possessed by this evil or whatever. But those type of vampires, they just want to kind of like nourish themselves on your blood, on your life force. Now, the black-eyed kids are a little bit more sinister because they act like a Nosferatu. And Nosferatu wants to be let into your house. Why? What does it want to come into your house for? Why does it want to be let in? So that's what I'm posing to you guys. Like, I don't know. That's an idea that I had when I, doing the research, hearing all these stories, that it seems parallel. Like the old Nosferatu vampire has kind of reinvented itself into this type of entity. And not only that, but what better vehicle does it have? What better vessel, rather, does it have than a kid that seems lost in the middle of the night? Of course, you're going to want to help him. Of course, you want to stop and see what's going on, because that's strange. That's something that should not be happening and falls out of the norm.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. It's a really strange thing. What's your thoughts, Colton?
I just wanted to say, what if it's not that the vampires base themselves off Nosferatu, but the other way around? Dun dun dun.
Mind blown right there.
Boom. Yeah.
I mean, it is a possibility. Everything is open to interpretation, of course, but it's strange how these things are parallel. These things are lining up, like Charlie was saying.
Yeah, no, I guess I really don't know how to put it. It's definitely strange, but the connection there. I wonder if it's just a coincidence, or if there actually is a real connection.
I want to say probably just like not like a coincidence, because if you're hunting things for their life force, obviously you want to be let in. I don't think it's like it's a rule they have to. It's just like thrill the hunt, I guess. It's like, these stupid humans let me into their house and I'm gonna kill them. These dum-dums.
I mean, you do have a point there.
I mean, I wonder how they feel if they just get their the door slammed on their face. Like, aw.
I'm just like, well, hey, next house I guess.
Trick or treat.
Yeah, no. Actually, that brings up a good point. I wonder if during Halloween there's any sightings of black-eyed kids.
It could just be kids dressing up like that.
Well, you don't know, Colton.
I mean, exactly. That's the whole thing about this. You don't know. That's what I'm saying. Another explanation. Just kids dressing up, scary, or their parents are doing it. If I was a parent and I had a kid, I would make him dress up as like a little demon. Like, go knock on that guy's house and scare him.
And go scare him and stuff.
Yeah.
Man, what kind of parent are you?
A bad one.
It's all good, man. I do the same thing with mine. So I let him dress up like Chucky in the middle of the night and go to sleep like that. So it's all right.
Nice.
Yeah. So if that's all we have on the the coven, the vampire coven of El Paso, let's go ahead and move on to our. Let me check the time here. Yeah, no, we got time. So let's go into our last bit into the man dog that you were talking about, or if you want to talk about the horse lady, whichever one you feel.
I think the man dog is a little bit more exciting because I've heard so much about the man dog. What have you guys heard about it before I go into my bit as well?
Well, as personally, as it's one of my favorite cryptids, I know a lot about it.
Yeah, and I know.
Cool. I want to hear.
I know some stuff from what he's told me, like theories about it.
Honestly, Ray, I could be here all night if I went over everything I knew about the dog, man. Let's just say
give me the 5 peso version.
Okay, so we have this upright walking canine that there's supposedly I like to think there's 7 types of them. Differentiating which types of, whether it looks more like a timber wolf or the hyena variety that we have in Arizona and New Mexico, or even the more Sasquatch looking ones, the type 3s, You know,
Hmm.
I know, those classifications. Then you have the sub classifications, whether it's physical, interdimensional, and spiritual. And then you have the gray area, which is like the skinwalkers pretending to be a dog man. And of course, I know about the beasts of LBL because that's one of my favorite cases. I know a lot about this cryptid. It's to put the least, to say the least.
Dude, you know a lot about that. So that's cool. So let me throw a few things at you and see what you think about this. So the first time I ever heard about the man dog, from El Paso, from San Elizario, was a story, way back in the day, that there was a group of kids that were playing outside, in San Eli, and back then it was like the late '80s. San Eli was very, like, I guess, rural. There wasn't a lot of stuff out there. There was certain, just like they had a 7-Eleven and a grocery store, and that was about it. I don't know if you guys have been out there recently, but it seems a little bit more urban. There's more stuff. Houses are better looking. There's more like stores and stuff like that. So, what I heard was that there was these kids outside, and they had like this court, like a rebote. You guys know what rebote is? The wall ball.
Yeah.
Okay, so these kids were out there. They were playing at the wall ball court, and you can see, if you drive through San Diego, you can see the wall ball court there. Like, everybody used to hang out there. I think it's still there, but they were playing there, and they were hitting the ball. And the ball bounced off the wall, and it went across the street. And when it went across the street, someone had to go get it. When they went across the street, there's like a cemetery in that area. I think it's very nearby, and there was like this man like standing there in the middle of the cemetery, and the kids were kind of scared to get near the ball because this man was just standing there, and he looked very imposing. They said that he looked like he had a trench coat on or something. So one of the kids finally decided to go grab it and just run back, and they said that when they went and grabbed it, they looked at the man, and that the man was very hairy, and he had like teeth protruding out of his mouth, that he looked like a wolf man. And they got scared, and they went back and they ran back to the rebote court. The rest of the kids kind of all got together, defensively, I guess you could say, and they were just staring down this man that was across the street. So after a while, the man like moves on, he takes off, and they all go home. The kids go home. One of the kids said that that night that they heard howling outside, and they went to the window and they looked outside, and it was near the train tracks that they lived by. And this thing was out there running around on all fours, like sniffing at the air. He actually thought, in the interview, and I'll look for the interview so I can send it to you so you can read it. He actually thought that it was following him, that he had followed him home, because he had seen it, the guy that went and got the ball. And that it was like running around outside, that he ran and he told his brother, and his brother went to the window and he corroborated the sighting, because he saw this thing running around. And they got really scared, and they just didn't want to peek outside anymore. Said that the next day they went out there to that area, and they found like these big dog prints, like bigger than a regular dog, were out there, and they couldn't figure out where it was coming from, other than the fact that they had seen this thing running around the night before on all fours. So there's that story, and that they never saw it again after that. But there's always been sightings about it. Supposedly, of course, according to legend, if you drive around San Elizario in the middle of the night, like after midnight, you'll see a man walking down the street, walking down the side of the road, and he'll be hunched over. And as you drive up and turn around and look at him, he'll have the head of a dog and the body of a man. And it looks like he just took the head off of the dog and put it on his own body, and that he's walking around. There's been sightings of this thing running around with like dead cats around its neck, all this craziness that I've heard. The original legend that I heard when I started like researching all this stuff, and I actually made a comic book about this, that back in the 1800s there was a salt war in San Elizario. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but salt was like a big thing back then. And since San Eli was so close to the border, that the Mexican community would come up through San Eli, and they would trade for salt. So something ended up happening where the people that owned the land, because bring in the salt from the salt flats, which are about an hour away. If you go off of Montana, they're like an hour and a half away towards Carlsbad. So they would bring in the salt and they would carry it all the way back. And Sanelli was the port, I guess, of entry to take the salt into Mexico. So these people that owned the land in that area, they started taxing the salt more, and the locals got upset because they were, trying to make money off of it. They're the ones that were working on it, and all these locals were of Mexican descent, of course, but they were in their old ways. This was back in the 1800s. So what ended up happening is that there was a kind of a revolt from that little village of Sanelli, and the locals started like killing people. Like, hey, you're making our lives hell. We're going to murder these guys. So the Texas Rangers were called in, and this is documented fact. The Texas Rangers were called in to stop the uprising, and they were defeated by the locals. It's the only time in recorded Texas history that the Texas Rangers had a defeat, a loss. Supposedly, this is the part where it gets kind of crazy. Supposedly, the people that lived in that area in the village, they took the Rangers, they massacred them, they killed them, but one of them they left alive. And that one that they left alive, they cursed him to walk the earth for eternity, and he would never find a home like a dog. So that's where the dog man myth comes from, that apparently this Texas Ranger is that man, that dog that's been cursed by these locals. The shaman of the village cursed him to walk the rest of eternity like a dog, never finding a home. If I can say it in Spanish, que te arrastraras como un perro para la eternidad, nunca encontrando en donde vivir, or something like that. So that's the legend of the dog man that I know from San Elizario that I've heard.
Okay, so jumping back a little bit, and by a little bit I mean a whole lot. Let's go back to the first encounter. What I find interesting is that you mentioned that it was, I had heard the same story, that you first spoke of. I heard it a while back, but it's funny how you mentioned, the graveyard. When it comes to the Dogman cryptid, graveyards are a huge, I wouldn't say huge thing, but they're very prevalent in Dogman encounters. Let's go to the for example, let's go to the to a couple of encounters that happened in Kentucky. There was a couple going to a cemetery. I think it's a video too of this. They see this thing, this dog-like thing digging out one of the graves in the area. I don't know if you've seen that one before, Ray. It's kind of weird because this whatever it is, it's digging with its hands. It's not using any shovels, anything, and they're just watching it. They're in the middle of the day digging in the cemetery.
I saw that video. It creeped me the hell out, man, because like you said, it was the middle of the day. What the hell is this person? First of all, someone digging with his bare hands. What is that all about? Like in a graveyard of all places?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You just missed like the huge thing. Like, why even dig a graveyard if you're not an undertaker? Why would you do that? Like, unless you're like putting flowers, but even still,
yeah,
you don't dig in a graveyard.
If I can say something, you know how dogs like to chew on bones? Maybe that.
I'm gonna highly disagree with you.
All right, that's fair.
Because there are. Let's look at Anubis for a quick second. He was a. Wasn't he the god of the afterlife?
Kind of, yeah. He helped guide the souls to the I guess the end.
And how funny is it that that Dogman reports are sometimes in graveyards? We have a correlation there. Not only do we have a correlation there, but Native American, depending on which tribe we're talking about here, they would they would reference these dogmen as protectors of the sacred, sacred burial grounds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another correlation that we have there, and I just find that very interesting. What do you think, Colton?
I mean,
you think it's all a coincidence, or you think it's just?
I mean, graveyards are always like the scary part. You don't go there at night, or else something will be there waiting for you.
Well, what do you think about that? Idea, Ray?
I mean, I've been to that graveyard. A few years ago, we went out there to go check it out. Once, when I started kind of doing the research, doing the investigation, as far as the dogman was concerned, because I was fascinated by it. I had a friend who actually said that he saw it like peek into his window when he was living in San Elizario. But then again, he did a lot of drugs, so I couldn't just take that at face value. I needed to go and see if there was some truth to it. So that cemetery that's there, it's weird, man. It's creepy because it's very, very old. A lot of old stuff, a lot of old graves and stuff like that. We did manage to catch a few like orbs, and we did catch this one light, like a glowing, I guess, orb, I guess you could say, that it looked kind of like, it's called? There's something that, swamp gas. It looked kind of like swamp gas in the cemetery, and it was just floating around, and we did catch it on video. I don't have that video. My aunt's like ex-husband has it, or my aunt-in-laws, or whatever the hell you want to call her, has it. So I could possibly try and get it and see if we could analyze it, but we did catch this thing, and it looked kind of like it was very familiar. It seemed to me like it was swamp gas, but the way that it moved was just bizarre because it seemed like it hovered over the graves and stuff. There was no evidence of any man dog or anything, unfortunately, but that was the one thing that we did manage to catch when we went out there.
See, it's very interesting that you brought up the orb. That's another thing that's extremely prevalent with dogman sightings. But the one encounter that comes to mind is the Palmetto, the farm in Palmetto. It's a state. No, I'm stupid. It's not a state. It's a town. It's a small rural town. Basically, this couple, they were in a farmhouse. And they were, they were on their porch drinking their evening coffee, and then out of nowhere, they start seeing these glowing orbs out in the distance near the woods, and they're like, "Oh, what's happening over there?" So they grab a flashlight and they shine it towards there. The glowing orbs disappear, and they start getting a bad feeling about something. So they go back inside. And after a while, of course it had to be a full moon, or at least a bright moon. I don't remember correctly, but it was bright enough. They started seeing these wolf-like creatures coming out from the woods after they had witnessed the glowing orbs. So that's another correlation I find interesting, because does that mean they're spiritual, or does that mean they're interdimensional? I personally don't think a physical type dogman, would be able to do that. Something like that.
See, and now tying everything back to what we started talking about at the very beginning about the Bigfoots and the cave usage. I know I've seen it somewhere, but I can't remember where it was, that some cemetery was built or made on top of a cave system, and there was a lot of I guess sinkholes where the graves were sinking into the caves. Now, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but I'm going to throw it out there nonetheless, of course, because we're just hypothesizing, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, but
what if these specific things, they're another branch of Bigfoot, they look canine, they're attracted, be as it may, to the rotting flesh of humans, perhaps, and that's why they appear in graves to dig them up. Now, a little bit, stretching it a little bit more, what if that's what they're using to get around? These cave systems, maybe some of these cemeteries were built under these cave systems, and people don't know, or on top of these cave systems, and people don't know about it, and that's how they get around. And to them, it's just, whatever, this is where we live. But to us, once we witness it, it's like, holy crap, these things are appearing out of nowhere. Of course, the glowing orbs, the interdimensionality. Is that a word? I'm not sure, but it is now. All that coming together, maybe that's what they witnessed at this one cemetery. Maybe that's what they saw, this thing digging up something that it put there or that was there because it's its home and it found it there. I mean, that's just I'm throwing that out there just to see what you guys think about that.
It's very. I guess that would make sense in a way, that maybe that perhaps it's a coincidence that some graveyards have the cave systems underneath them. What do you think, Colton?
I don't know if like the cave systems underneath. What I'm thinking is that if something's hungry enough to need to eat, I think a graveyard would be a good spot, because this might be a little bit morbid, but you can get the bone marrow from inside if it's a full skeleton, or eat the flesh if it's hungry enough and it knows hey, there's a Kinder Surprise egg underneath the ground, just gotta dig for it a little bit.
I mean, it's true. And going back to you, Charlie, knowing you know a lot more than I do about the Dogman. Now that particular branch, the feral branch, I've heard has been, I guess, accused. I don't know if you want to say accused, but they're cannibalistic, or they eat their own or something like that. I've heard somewhere that that's what they do. I mean, would that be possible as well? That since they already have a taste for, I don't know, meat in that respect, that they would go after these corpses that are just pretty much just there, like carrion birds or something like that?
Honestly, I don't know. Possibly it's. I never thought about it in that way until you brought it up right now.
I mean, it's just we're spitballing when it comes to these things. Of course, we're not going to know, but I mean, that's where research starts, right? We start talking about these theories and see what we can prove and what we can disprove. Yeah. But it's just wild to think about these things. Like the Beast of Bray Road, that thing has been around for a long time, but I don't think it's just one. I think it's a tribe of these things that live out there. Yeah. So, I mean, in that essence, it would probably play out the same way in this area or in any area that these things appear in.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely under the belief that there are different, quote unquote tribes that are in America. Another thing I wanted to point out is we also have the different types of Dogman. Like when you started describing the Dogman in the first encounter, the first thing that came to mind is that was the type 3 variant 3, the type 3 variant 3, which, so basically that type of Dogman is, it looks like a Sasquatch. The only thing that it doesn't have, in common is the facial structure. But it's kind of weird, because then we get it gets kind of weird there, because then we get comparisons to another cryptid that I'm pretty sure you've heard of, which is the Gugwi, which is a Bigfoot that kind of looks like a baboon, because it has that snout. It gets kind of weird there, because you're like, dog snout, baboon snout. It's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, like I was saying earlier, I think it's like I was mentioning to Colton, I think it's the inbreeding, the fact that these things are so isolated that they start reverting, and so their mouths, and I've heard about this, when you start eating, I guess when a cannibal starts eating its own, humans or whatever, they start getting these features because they're getting an oversaturation of protein, kind of like when you eat a lot of rabbit, that they call it like what do they call it, like rabbit I forgot the word. Anyway, there's this thing where if you go hunt and you eat nothing but protein, you start getting emaciated. You start losing a lot of body fat because there's no nutrients to it. There's nothing that other than protein to it. So in essence, if these things are eating each other, so they're reverting more feral, so their eyes start getting more sunken, their mouths start receding, their lips start receding, so you start seeing more of their like canine features coming out. Everything is elongating and protruding, their hands, their fingers. So I think that might be where that comes in as far as these different strains, if you want to call them that, different branches of dogmen.
Yeah, that's a very that's a good way of thinking about it. Personally, this is the thing about the podcast, or cryptozoology in general. It's a good idea, but in my personal opinion, I don't subscribe to it. It's not Hulu,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, and that's good because we can't just all agree on the same thing. We have to have different opinions, different views on the topic, so that we can actually make some sort of headway when we start, going out there and researching. Once time permits, once the pandemic is over or something.
No, definitely. Ray, unfortunately we are running out of time here.
No problem.
Because I know you got your stream to get to. So we're gonna cut it short for now. We will definitely continue this topic another day. It was nice having you on again, Ray. It's been a fun time.
Very nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you as well, Colton. Thank you so much, Charlie, once again for the opportunity, man. And whenever you need me, I'm there, brother. I'll show up and we'll talk, cryptids and paranormal stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's really nice talking to somebody who actually knows something about the whole thing. Because this guy, it's like talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, I respond to a brick wall at least.
I love you guys' repartee with each other, man. That's what you need. You can't all just agree on everything. So that's good. Good job, Colton. Good job, Charlie.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I'm gonna go ahead and. So this has been the Cryptid Paranormal Committee podcast. I was your host, Charlie,
and your co-host, Colton.
Thank you for.
And your special host, Ray, or a special guest, Ray.
And thank you for listening.